So Arjun, welcome back to the second debriefing session, and congratulations on a 760 this time from a
Thank you.
740.
Yes, right. It is good to be back, and happy to say that I was able to go up on the curve.
Okay, so let's talk about. So we're going to keep this very focused. V41 was what you had in December. Now you have
Right,
a V45. How did you approach this
right.
improvement?
So, I mean, we did have a conversation before my second attempt,
Hmm.
and right then and there, you've given me a basic structure, and that's almost exactly what I did.
Hmm.
So, step one, get the ESR,
Hmm.
scan every inch of it for weaknesses,
Hmm.
and right there, I was lucky. I had a glaring weakness. I
Which
had a
was
76 percentile RC, reading
good.
comprehension.
Good.
Right.
Hmm.
So straight up, I knew that was the key pain area, and the CR and SC looked good. I had a 97th percentile critical reasoning, and I think a 91 or 90th percentile sentence correction. So there was
Good.
room for improvement there as well. But it was clear that my main area was going to be reading comprehension. So I realized that, and to be very frank, I sort of took it for granted. In terms of writing the GMAT, the only real piece we as Indians were exposed to is reading comprehension.
Mm-hmm.
So I expected it to be somewhat of something that would intuitively come in. Everything else was new to me, especially CRST. So I had to pay much more attention during the first attempt to that. So
Mm-hmm.
this time around, I started off with the basics. I went through the EGMAT modules. Uh, Again, after having done a lot of CR, I felt like the RC is just an extension of it. You find several questions, especially the application-based questions, to be along those lines. So completed those modules, did most of the practice RCs you had there, and then sort of attacked Scholaranium. And I did a bunch of ability quizzes, and I could see the ability slowly going up. I think I touched around 97th percentile in my last ability quiz for
Okay.
RC, and that's when I said, okay, it's time to move on to the official guides, hammer it, hammer it down before I sort of cement this.
Okay.
So I think that was the real journey. It was pretty straightforward. No real hiccups there. It was the typical EGMAT formulaic method I followed, and I think I also paid the price for not following it around the first time. So I think there you go.
First of all, I'm glad that you had a glaring weakness, of course, and
Right, right,
and
yeah.
and 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 B, you kind of being diligent beyond once you have a 740 is difficult, but I'm glad that you did that,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
really happy. I'm just looking at your account over here again. So good scores, concept and practice quizzes. Let's go into Scholaranium. And yeah, the RC 97 percentile last ability quiz,
Right,
Janet.
right.
Okay. And a good number of practice questions attempted here. And I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
go towards
I
hard.
mean, to me, yes, I didn't want to. I had to maintain ability at the same time, so it was a
Yes.
bit of a balancing act. I couldn't really focus on just one section, so I didn't at all want another weakness to sort of emerge or lose sort of my touch with the rest.
Mm-hmm.
So that really was how I approached just the RC part of it,
Okay.
and be, and beyond that, I think the majority of my time was actually spent in solidifying the Q49, which was something I didn't anticipate. I felt like the first attempt things went really well, and my practice test scores, however, on the official mocks didn't really reflect the Q49. Q49 was on the highest end of my practice test scores.
Got it.
So under no circumstances did I want that to fall. So uh, I remember before my first attempt, I had ranges from Q43 to Q45s and Q49. So this was clearly, I mean, it was a good day, and I need to make sure that the second attempt was one as well. So I did again look at the ESR, but unfortunately there was not a clear glaring weakness.
Mm.
Things were around similar percentiles across the core skills. So it basically meant I'd have to just target medium hard. I did a couple of scholarly questions. I also extensively used the GMAT club test that came with my EGMAT subscription. That was great value to me.
Mm.
So all of that sort of contributed to the final attempt, and it was pretty methodical. I'm actually happy that I sort of wasn't as haphazard as I was the first time around. I remember we talked about how I was I was freestyling with GMAT club questions all across the board,
Yes.
but this time around, like you said, questions with good structured solutions, make sure I figure out weaknesses, and
So, so,
That
so let's kind of really map it. So you did spend about 20, 25 days preparing for this 740 to 760.
right. Approximately, yes. I took a bit of a break after my first attempt. So yes.
Let's kind of map it into number of hours. I think first as a first step. How many hours do you think you would have put in?
So the advantage I had was the beginning of Jan. I had a small break, so that basically meant me putting in 6 to 7 hours for a week. And after that, once college, I'm a final year student, so things start to pile on. I would end up putting in 4 to 5 hours a day to just make sure that. So RC would obviously occupy a bunch of it, especially.
So I think let's first do the math first, right? So it's a fun week, 6 hours. That's about 42 hours or so. And then
Right,
another, how many more days for about 4 hours should I count?
I think you put in another 10 to 12, right? I'm
So
not
another
counting
50
the
hours. Let's call it 50 hours. So
right,
total about
right,
90 hours.
right.
Out
I'd
of
say,
this,
and this is including the days I took mock tests.
mock tests
So
also.
that obviously takes in a big chunk, and you really can't do much after you've taken a test. You really need to like wind down. You're basically done for the day. It's very intense. So I think in terms of preparation hours, I think you subtract approximately 5 days because I really took all the GMAT prep tests again. I took almost all those tests again. So we're really looking at around 20 days of preparation.
So
For
how
those
many
separate
hours are
ones.
we talking about? 20 days of
So
preparation.
I'd put it around 70 because we looked at the 42 hours initially,
Yeah.
and that was the bulk of all the improvements. And then we had approximately 30. Yeah.
So if I were to divide the 70 and really say RC is one portion and maintenance is maintaining the abilities is the other part. So, or let's call
I
it
would.
RC quant and then maintaining verbal. How would you divide that?
So again, maintaining verbal for me was basically just doing a couple of hard CR and ST
Let's call
questions.
it him.
Yeah. So that really didn't take much time. It would basically be 5 questions here and there, maybe even something I picked up while scrolling on GMAT Club. I was very active on forums, just looking at what people would post, so stuff like that. So I would give half and half to quant and RC, the remainder of the hour.
So, okay.
So
So
the
about
entirety of
30
quant,
hours each, I would say. You put
yeah,
10 hours on SC and CR maintenance.
right,
Okay.
right.
And then about 20 odd hours for mocks. 20, 25 hours for mocks.
Right. I attempted mocks 1 through 6, retake them, and again, I think what people don't realize is the first two mocks have giant question sets. So you take those first two mocks and you'll find questions that come out of nowhere, and it's a good test of your ability. But those last couple of mocks have much smaller question banks, in my
Yes.
experience, because
They
by
do.
the time
They
I got
do.
to my
They do.
right, so by the time I got to my second attempt, it almost was like I was retaking a GMAT. So it was great for confidence, but at the same time, won't take those scores seriously. Yeah.
Okay, that's good. That's good, and that's a very nice split of time. I think that's something. The reason I wanted to get this out was because it's important to know how you planned from that
Mm-hmm.
a V41.
And I think there is no real method to the madness when it comes to sort of improving from, say, a 700 to a 700. The more and more I read up about people who retaking things, they all had different things that they'd have to do. There was no real path to building, maintaining. It had to be a weakness that you target, and then you would have to maintain. So it's highly specific. So I'd recommend that you don't really go
I
into
think
depth
the
with things like
process is the same. The process remains the same. You figure
the
out the
outline. Yeah,
weakness,
100%.
right?
Yeah.
And then you have and that's kind of where it's the process that matters.
Mm-hmm. Right. True.
You have to do maintenance. You have to do really say primary weakness, secondary area, then maintenance, and that's something that everyone does.
But it can be annoyingly hard to see
It is. It
improvement. I
is.
remember. Yeah.
It is. It is very hard.
Right.
Just especially because your mind will tell you, man, you already know this.
Yeah. So I just generally redoing some of the, so even brushing up fundamentals, massive roadblock in my mind, especially on SC and CR, just reading through stuff and I'd be like, oh, I've done this before. Is there really a reason for me to go through this again? But it is a necessity at the end of the day. You're retaking it. I'd say on the second attempt, my nerves did get a little more aggravated than they were the first time around. Solely because there was, in my mind, there was more of, much more in terms of just a time commitment that went in. The first time around was me saying, oh, I'll give this a shot. But the second time was me saying I need to get better than the 740 I scored. So that was a bit of a challenge, but I think it just starts to brush away once the mechanics sort of kick in and you're on autopilot. The test starts
So,
moving
so,
on.
so, so then let's just walk me through that point when you were on the last question of the test where you can really say, see my score. What was going through in your mind?
So again, my section ordering was quant verbal, and then I still had the IR and AW to get through.
Mm-hmm.
So just doing the IR and AWA while you're in your mind, you're just constantly thinking about what your end score is a task in itself. But you really have to firstly force yourself to sit through the entirety and make sure you use up those 30-minute slots that you have.
Mm-hmm.
But and to be very honest, it was a mixed bag. I feel like to a large extent also at the higher score levels, it is a matter of a question here and there, and that
It
makes the
is.
10-point difference.
Yes.
So when I remember I let out a massive smile as soon as I saw the 760. It was the first thing that came to my mind, and then I just frantically tried to like accept the score because for some reason I thought it was going to disappear. But yeah, and it did feel
For some reason,
fantastic.
I thought it was going to disappear. Okay.
Right, because these guys don't give you enough time. As soon as the score flashes on screen, they just ask you to accept or decline, and you're out of the test center.
Okay.
But and I actually had a couple of issues at this time attempt. There was only one washroom, and during the 8-minute break, surprisingly, several people were standing in line. So that's the nightmare situation you really can't avoid. I decided to just take the hit and go back in because in no circumstances did I want to lose her on time during my verbal section. But I think it's just being ready for stupid situations like this to arise and taking them on the chin.
Okay, well, I think that's good. I'm really, really glad. Excuse me, that you finally got through this. You're done for the next 5 years, and hopefully you're done for life. And then you apply
Hopefully
to
not for life.
B-school in 5 years, and you get through, or in 4 years.
4 years, yes. That's the plan for now.
All right, I think apply in 3 years. That's what I would say. That way
Right.
you get there.
In terms of age, though, I actually have this question to ask you with regards to the fact that, okay, as someone who's an Indian graduating from a 3-year
Three-year degree.
undergraduate course, right? Now, firstly, kids in the US start school a year late. And in addition to that, almost all courses are 4 years long. Am I right?
Undergrad is 4 years, yes.
Undergrad is always 4 years. So that means that I'm entering the workforce at age 20, and these guys are already entering the workforce at age 22.
Or later.
Or I mean,
if you take longer than 4 years to graduate, yes.
Sure. But I'm looking at the cream who will be applying to business school. I'm not saying that these guys won't, but usually that's the path I see. So when it comes to average age, I would be 2 years younger, right, than the ideal applicant in terms of the US competition. Would that play a factor or play a role at all in admission?
It's the experience that matters. Simple.
Okay, so it's just years out of college. That's all.
It's the number of years of work experience that matters.
Okay, fair.
And the quality of that work experience.
Okay.
So right. I mean, what do you have to say for those 3 years that you'd spend at DE Shore or one of the other places?
But okay, in your opinion, what would the sweet spot to, one, increase my candidacy, make sure I'm the ideal applicant, and two, give me enough workplace context to leverage what I learn at the MBA?
I'd say 3 years.
Would that be 3 years at matriculation, or I apply having completed 3 years at work?
So I would say so I think here is something which there are 2 or 3 things. First of all, one is you would feel that you need an MBA. And that's kind of, I look at a lot of people and I see you in many ways, you are very similar to how I was, although I had no interest in finance, by the way, when I was graduating. But really what would happen is when you're in an organization and you grow to a point where you say, hey, I need to have an MBA because I'm questioning these things and I'm not able to justify my questions, but I know that they are the right question and I don't have good answers to these questions as well. And a stage will come when you are in that, if you truly are looking at an MBA as a path to intellectual growth rather than purely from a salary growth.
Okay.
And so you would know. and say, man, I don't want to do this because I have these other questions, and that's kind of where I want to go.
Okay, but I think
Okay. That's something
because
that I would wait for.
I mean, the only real fear to me is riding on the back of a non-engineering degree in India, which can
It's a
seem
good
pretty
thing.
daunting.
It's a good thing.
Okay, um, uh, it maybe in terms of the cohort you'll be clubbed in, it won't be the IT male sort of thing, but again,
Why do you
I'm
think
sure
you'd be
you.
clubbed in IT mail?
I know. I mean, say I wouldn't be right. I would be
Oh, you
Indian male,
won't.
but like
Yes.
still somewhat overrepresented. But luckily, I'm not part of the
Mm.
IT segment. The issue again that I see is most colleges, when it comes to undergraduate institutions in India, the only real institutions they've heard of or they recognize are the IITs and maybe even NITs.
Mm.
But beyond that, at least from the admission consulting that consultants that I've interacted with, it seems like they sort of you're placed on.
So I think again, those are concerns, and I won't say those are. I mean, those are reasonable concerns. Okay,
Mhm,
but the thing which is there is what gets your candidacy to shine through, and in your case, I think it's your GMAT score, and
mhm,
it is your work experience. Now, I mean, I know of people who've gone to IITs, have not gone through, not been able to get into top schools, because ultimately 3-4 years out of college, it's like it's not an IIT that matters, frankly. It
mhm.
is your degree, it's your work experience that matters.
Okay.
So I mean, the same thing out of business school. It's you get your B school accounts only for your first job.
Mhm.
Beyond that,
And
what
then
do you
it's
do
just
over there? Yeah.
okay. Okay. I think so. From what at least I've gathered, I think to me the Indian MBA does not seem uh, that much of a lure right now.
Unless
But
and until you want to start your own company here right after your MBA, I would not do it, given
okay,
what I know.
I think that's fair. So uh, when you say something like an exceptional piece, I remember we had this conversation
Mm.
earlier about you just saying, at least the top schools they look for what is the exceptional piece in your profile, etc.
Yes.
Uh, while working a full-time job, do you mean something like a project, or do you mean like
Yes.
a
In the job.
passion project
In the job.
in the job?
Yes.
Okay.
There's also, if you go to our YouTube channel,
Mhm.
there's an interview by Mansi, and I'm trying to conduct a few more of those, where Mansi, and so Mansi is someone who's gotten into Harvard, Stanford, Wharton, and a
Right.
bunch of other schools. So we talked about our work experience and said what allowed you to get into these schools, and so there's about 2 hour long discussion that we had, which is on our YouTube channel, and I'm just going to tell you a few instances. So Mansi
Mhm.
worked for an oil and gas company,
Mhm.
and she essentially, I think, was posted in Indonesia for a 6 month long stint on an
Mhm.
oil platform. So I don't know how much you know about an oil platform, but an oil platform is something which is in the middle of the ocean, cut off
Right.
from the
Right.
world. It's an all steel structure. Okay,
Okay.
and typically this was an all male kind of platform.
Okay.
She was the
Okay.
only woman. In fact, she had to hunt for a ladies' toilet to go there. Just
Mhm. Okay.
now,
Yeah.
this is setting the context. Okay.
Right.
Now, she was actually leading them. So imagine
Okay.
folks who would not
Mhm.
work with a woman, and she was in charge of a bunch of these folks. So
Mhm.
she had to, and she was sent there for some sort of a process improvement,
Mhm.
and which required that they change the way they do things. So how she gained their trust, and how she implemented that in a course of 6 months, was an amazing piece of leadership experience.
Mhm. Okay.
So that's,
And something I'll have to find something
yeah.
that
Every growing organization will give you opportunities. The question is, are you the one who's going to go and grab it? Why? Because it's the same thing. I mean, you are at Christ College right now,
Mhm.
and in your case, how many people in your class have taken the test?
um I'd say I'd say around 50.
Uh,
There's a
50
sizable
out of,
class, but
no, how
50
many
out
have,
of
out of what?
it's out of around 600. A lot of them took the CAT right now. Yeah,
All of them took the CAT. How many of them have taken the GMAT?
around 50, I'd say. Yeah.
Okay, so it's 1 out of 12, right?
Right.
About 8% or so. So the others were, I mean, when you're preparing for the GMAT, you actually had to forego certain activities which others were doing, especially because the
Right.
CAT was
Yeah.
done sometime in November, and you had these two
Right.
months, probably the
Yes, I
last.
know that all too well. I
Yes,
mean,
yeah,
it has
you've
been.
you've suffered through that, right?
Yeah.
So in the same way, when you would be working at DE Shaw, there'd be your colleagues, many of your colleagues would I mean, there'd be opportunities that would come by, not a responsibility being assigned to you, but there's a change coming, a new process is coming, and there'll be your
Hmm.
friends who'd be really going for a movie. Whereas if you are someone who sits back, understands what needs to be done, and then implements that, takes a lead over there, that's where
Hmm.
you kind of get those responsibilities. You get to lead those changes, and
Right.
that's when
Okay.
that actually makes very interesting stories when you go to
Okay.
the MBA
Okay.
application.
Right. I mean, I think it's it's something I'll have to look out for and be super proactive. But
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah, yes. It doesn't mean you don't have fun, but it's about putting in that additional 10 to 15%, not like crazy amount of time because you still need your
Hmm.
brain to work, but that additional 10 to 15% that truly compounds all throughout your life and makes like a 600-700% difference in 10 years.
Hmm. Okay.
So
Sounds sounds like I have my work cut out for me, but I'm ready.
that's good. I mean, that's essentially what you should do.
Hmm.
And frankly, if you find that that is something that's not happening, I mean, if you find you're in a dead end job, quit.
Hmm. Okay.
I mean, it's something that I would say.
Okay. And I mean, I a lateral move. I'm guessing
Have a
something
lateral
along.
move, do something. I mean, I will tell you this that so when I did my MBA at
Hmm.
Babson, one of the biggest, the most difficult things in my life was to get my first internship. Okay.
Okay.
And it's just I had to write about 100 cover letters before I got my first internship, and it was like started in October of 2004, got the internship somewhere around May of 2005. This is
Hmm.
that long a struggle. Now, but once I got my first internship, I was like, man, this is and I got my internship in a space which is practically IT process consulting. I did not
Hmm.
like that, but it paid really
Hmm.
well. Because it paid really well and that was only 7 to 8 hours of work a day, I took a second internship which was unpaid, but they made me a VP of marketing for a startup. That guy
Oh,
didn't have
okay.
money. He liked the marketing piece that I brought about. I already had the money coming in from this other internship. Okay.
Okay.
And I would spend like 2 to 3 hours a day, and I did that for 3 months. Okay.
Hmm.
And I actually had to drive from Boston to Connecticut every week. It was a 3 hour drive one way that I would do. But once I did that internship, the experience, because there was lots of new things when you're in a startup that was there, that post my internship, during my second year, I had 4 more internships, all of them paid. And
Oh,
and
wow.
and
Okay.
everywhere that I would go, we wouldn't talk about my paid internship, but this unpaid internship.
Hmm.
And then once I graduated from Boston, I moved directly to Phoenix because we have family here. And even though I was on an H1, I mean, Babson doesn't have a ton of contacts in Phoenix, but because of all those 6 internships, within 10 days I had a job here.
Hmm. Okay.
But if you think about it, it's just that 10% that I did more, but that 10%
Right. Right.
added up.
Right.
So
I mean, while we're talking about it, I also wanted to know how easy was it? I mean, in terms of you as well as your peers, when you
mm.
found shifting. I'm assuming that most of them came from backgrounds that they wanted to get out of, or they shifted
Mm.
industries, etc. How easy was that shift, especially when you're looking at something like marketing and
So
uh,
I was looking at marketing, yes.
right, and something coming from something like IT when it just
So
falls apart.
so for me it was easy. As a
Okay,
person, it was easy because I was passionate about marketing. For people to believe that I can do it was very difficult, and that's where the
okay,
first 9 months of stuff
right.
took. And because for me, I'd say it was easy because, as I was saying earlier, I had this growing sense of unease when I was working for Nokia. It's like, man, we're investing so much money, I'm not seeing
Hmm.
the returns. So at that point itself, I had started reading up a bunch of books on a market positioning, strategy, and all of that stuff. This was stuff that I was reading a year before I started my MBA. In fact, I told you I got into GSB Chicago. And then the reason I got into GSB Chicago, I think one of the contributing factors, at least what I would think, is that I was arguing with one of the professors online as to, hey, what is the ROI of R&D in companies? Because Nokia would do a ton of R&D and I couldn't see the ROI. And I couldn't justify it to my boss, man, you're spending, because I had like $5-6 million to spend. And I'm like, these guys who are in Finland are doing the same thing. I'm doing the same thing. Why are they letting me spend all of this money?
Okay.
And we were arguing. I think that's one of the reasons when I got in. So I was already thinking about it. So for me to do that transition wasn't difficult. But to convince others, because I was a hardcore researcher, I was building technologies and cell phones that in 2002, 2003, that came into the phones in 2014. So now imagine a guy who's doing that work and you say, I'm a marketer, I can understand people. I'm like, no, but you've been working with stuff which is so futuristic. How the hell can you?
But
yeah.
And so again, it was a process of, like you said, the internships and etc. that led them to believe.
That's basically, once I had the internships, no one had a doubt.
Okay.
So in fact, the job that I got at Honeywell was actually building businesses. So they would give me, I had to figure out opportunities that existed within the Honeywell customer base, and then identify areas of investment, $200-300 million dollar worth of market. I would get $3-4 million worth of investment, work with our engineering and labs to build the first products, get the first couple of million of sales, and then move on from one thing to the other. It was a lot of fun work, and so complete transformation from what I was doing earlier at Nokia.
But if you don't mind me asking, when exactly did you find this clarity in terms of, okay, biz dev or marketing was really what you're cut out to do?
It wasn't what I was cut out to do. I actually did fabulously well in wireless too. It was just that, and even today, if you think about it, I open up sometimes when I see an IEEE journal, I would open it up and then I would read it. And then wireless technologies, I'm still quite familiar with them. It was just that essentially you really say, so in the end, my goal really was to make a difference. And when I graduated from my engineering in 99, the thing really was, man, wireless is going to change the world. We are still in 2G telephony. Right now, you are on the verge of 5G.
5G, right.
So we were still in the world, think of it, where we were doing SMSs. And MMS was a luxury. The first camera phone wasn't out as of yet. It was like 4 years away. But as a concept at Nokia, we already had concept phones. And I was still not at Nokia, but I could see their brochures that were like iPhone-like phones. Those phones as a concept existed in 99, 2000, and the Nokia communicator was out. I don't know if you're aware of that or not. So for me, I thought as a technology, when I went from engineering to purely into wireless research, that part was going to make a difference. But then 3 years into research, I said, man, there are lots and lots of smart people doing this, but no one's building applications around it. So making decisions was something that I felt is I need to have the power to do. And that's what I said, I need that business side of things because I need to decide where to invest the money. That's when I went for an MBA.
Right. I think I'm hoping that my set of roles sort of demand me, and I reach that point wherein I really feel like this is the exact moment wherein
I think the thing which is there is, as long as you are, so there are two ways in which people think. One is people say, what will I do that will help me make money? The second way is people think is, what will I do that will help me make a difference? If you do the latter, the answers become very simple and you actually end up making a lot more money. If you really say, what do I do to make money, what you're going to find is you get the incremental benefit right away, but then you hit a ceiling. And in the end, your path isn't very different 10 years down the line.
Okay. Thank you. I think that makes a lot of sense, especially on just generally making sure my priorities aren't getting carried away with the numbers and stats that these schools come up with, but really when I'm ready.
If you're making a difference, you'll get the money. I think that's something which was there. That's an automatic outcome. It's the same way as you said, I'm going to focus on my weakness. This is what I need to fix right now. You got the scores.
So right.
Okay, so Arjun, that was good. I'm glad we had this chat. So let me actually